creationist perspective of the human genome. Little interesting to get into this some. National Geographic recently ran a series they called What Darwin Didn't Know. And I assure you, everything you're going to hear tonight, Darwin didn't know. Now, it's easy to pick on Darwin. He makes himself such a target. In fairness, though, there's no way Darwin could have known all that I'm getting ready to talk about this evening, because this was just simply beyond the state of knowledge of human understanding at that time. The reason that I bring this up, though, is it wasn't Darwin's fault that he didn't know this. But I challenge, and you will, I hope, wonder the same thing after my presentation this evening. If Darwin came along today and presented his ideas, would they have any chance whatsoever of acceptance in light of what we now know? Darwin's ideas were accepted in what I would consider a vacuum of scientific knowledge. We don't have that anymore. And what that also means is we don't have the excuse anymore of saying, well, we simply don't know, maybe this could be, maybe it could be, maybe it could be. And that's what a lot of Darwin was. If you read Origin of Species, if you can somehow stay awake to do that, it's a lot of maybe, perhaps, maybe, perhaps. Throw all those maybes and perhaps out now. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the human genome. It's no longer a maybe or perhaps, it's a no way. So scientists of today no longer have an excuse. If you're here and you're an evolutionist or you're leaning toward the evolutionist thinking, then you better pull your toes in, because I'm going to smash them big time. Because evolution just absolutely crumbles in the face of what I'm going to present this evening. Literally crumbles. Now, I'm a geneticist, okay, so what appeals to me isn't necessarily the same thing that appeals to a geophysicist or a cosmologist. But as far as I'm concerned, the silver bullet you're going to see in the next hour. I have yet to hear evolutionists, and the best in the world, I have yet to hear them not only offer a rational explanation of what I'm going to present to you, I have yet to hear them offer an explanation at all. It literally is the see, hear, and speak no evil. They just simply don't want to have anything to do with it. Now, what's most amusing is to preface all this. I was at a scientific meeting back in the early part of this decade, right at the time the human genome information was first being published. And at that meeting, I happened to strike up a conversation with a scientist who was at that time the head of the Department of Energy's component of genome research. And he just commented, just as a course of part of the discussion, that there were a number of congressmen that were very, very concerned about the publication of the human genome. And my response was, well, why are they concerned? The reason they're concerned is because so many of their constituents are those fundamentalist Christians. And this is going to be so devastating to their ideas of seven-day creation. He's very adamant. The human genome data was just going to destroy it. And in his opinion, these congressmen were like, oh no, it's going to be so devastating to our constituents and they won't vote for me again. So I proceeded to pump him on, well, what? Because he didn't know he was talking to one of those, okay? I proceeded to pump him. What is it that you say the human genome data is going to reveal? I'm not going to be able to talk about it all tonight because simply in 1 hour I can't talk about the whole human genome, all right? There's so much I'm going to have to leave out. But one of the big things that he talked about was junk DNA. And we'll talk about that some this evening. That was one of his big reasons, all this junk DNA. And in his mind, that was one of the huge pieces of evidence of how the genome destroyed the ideas of seven-day recent creation. So having set that up, all right, if you don't remember your genetics classes, that's a joke. Anyway, since I'm sure every one of you took my graduate level genetics class, right? Anyway, if you remember, the DNA molecule is a double-stranded, kind of almost a staircase type structure when you stretch it out. Okay, this double strand binds to each other by hydrogen bonding between the purines and the pyrimidines. So we have then thymine, adenine, guanine, and cytosine. Those are the purines and pyrimidines that we just simply abbreviate as TCGA. And so when we're talking about the code or the sequence of DNA, that's what we're talking about, is the T and the G and the C and the A. Like letters on a page, you rearrange the sequence of those purines and pyrimidines, and that rearranges the information contained on the DNA. Just like you rearrange the letters on a page, that rearranges the information on that page. Now, in the DNA molecule, notice being double-stranded, see the T's and the A's bind, I can't see real good, but the T's and the A's bind from the two strands. The T on one strand binds to an A on another strand. The G on one strand binds to the C on the other strand. This is called the complementary strand. Okay, so one strand has its complement. So where there's a C on one strand, it's bound to a G on the other strand. Now what that also means is what happens on one strand, it's not a matter of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Okay, what happens on one strand affects the other strand. Keep that in mind as we go. All right, this is a very simple overview of the molecule of DNA. Now, the human genome is actually comprised of DNA strands wound very tightly together. These are very long strands wound very tightly together. When you stain them and look at them under a microscope, they appear to have an X shape, except for the male sex chromosome, which has a Y shape, and so it's the Y chromosome. But the rest of them appear to have an X shape. They exist in pairs, so we say we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46 chromosomes in total. That's the human genome when we're talking about it as the nuclear DNA. So when I refer to the human genome, I'm talking about these 46 chromosomes, plus the mitochondrial DNA, which we'll talk about a little later on. Okay, so the human genome is referring to these chromosomes in your nucleus. This is where your DNA is. This is what gives you blue eyes, brown eyes,